Alright guys, today I'm going to teach you a little bit of a secret. Now, every single time that there's an NSO announcement, there's some really cool stuff that we get from time to time, you know, like Legend of Zelda or Metroid, or even like a little more obscure ones like Kid Icarus or something. But every once in a while, we get like an announcement that I'm like, okay, really? This game? And over time, I've started to realize something, that every time there's an announcement like that, like, for example, Scat on NES, you know, remember Scat? Or Spankys Quest on Super Nintendo? Come on, an absolute classic, am I right? No, not at all. So what the heck's going on here? Well, the answer to that question is that in the US, we have to have content for our service that we're paying for. However, the scheduling for certain games don't line up perfectly with what Japan has in mind, because Japan has a whole lot of games that we never got here in the US, a lot of great games that would be considered real classics to Japanese gamers. The latest one I can think of is the literal last NSO update, where all of a sudden we were getting Solar Jetman and Cobra Triangle. Yes, they're all made by Rare, but those are not Rare's best titles, and I can't really see Nintendo feeling desperate to get those on the surface. So, like, what happened? Why did we get these games? What did they get over in Japan? Well, let's answer that question right now, shall we? We're gonna go over here, and what is this? This is the first Japanese adventure, text-based adventure called Shin Onigashima. Now, you might recognize these characters if you ever played Super Smash Bros. Melee, because there's trophies for these characters, and sadly, this game never came out in the US. The big reason that it's not coming out in the US now, even as just like an untranslated version, because we sometimes get those, is because this one is heavily based in text. If you can't read Japanese, you're making no progress in Shin Onigashima. So sadly, as a response, we got a couple of Rare games instead. I guess to some people that would be a really good compromise, but to me, I would love to play Shin Onigashima someday. And, you know, just to give you a couple more examples here, I just want to show you something that I think would be really fun to kind of contrast here. So going back, I already kind of organized this a little bit. Here's a Japanese game that doesn't really have any relevance in the US, so we never got it in the US. They also got this game that is known in the US, but not very popular out here. It's called Mahjong. There's also Sumo Wrestling. There's also Famicom Wars, which is the precursor to Advance Wars. Just want to boot that one up super fast, just so that you can see, like, how cute and charming this game is. But again, it's primarily Japanese text-based, so if you don't know Japanese, it's going to be a hard time playing this game. So naturally, we're not going to get Famicom Wars. Also got Fire Emblem. Now, this was like one of those really rare instances where we didn't get it on NSO, but we did get a pay-to-play version of Fire Emblem just released on the Switch momentarily. It was like a limited release for some reason, but super cool that we got that at least. Yeah, so like this is just the NES alone, honestly. But like on the Super Nintendo, things get really interesting. And we get Marvelous Another Island Adventure, which is a game that was directed by Eiji Aonuma, you know, Legend of Zelda fame. And this one's really cool. It's like graphically very similar to A Link to the Past, and it was probably a really, really fun game. It would be great to play it, but sadly, again, this was not translated, so we're not going to ever see this over on the US unless you do fan translations and stuff like that. But, you know, that would be stepping into the legal gray area. Don't know if I would recommend it to my audience. But anyways, you got that. Then we got a remake of Fire Emblem 1 on the Super Nintendo, and this also includes a direct sequel to Fire Emblem 1, which is super cool. Then there's Fire Emblem 4, I think this one is called. It's Genealogy of the Holy War. And then beyond that, this one's really surprising, but we got Shin Megami Tensei 2, and then Shin Megami Tensei If. Wild stuff, am I right? Super cool. So what did we get in the US? Well, to answer that question is not very much. Like, we got Jelly Boy, Spankys Quest, Bomboozle, Hey Punk, Are You Tough Enough? Actually, I think this one did come out in Japan, maybe, or I can't remember for sure. I know it's just that it was localized in a very strange way. We also got Congo's Caper, which is actually a pretty good one. But, like, you know, Does it compare to Fire Emblem and Shin Megami Tensei? No, I wouldn't say so. But that's okay. I appreciate the fact that they're trying, you know? It's nice when you think about it that in spite of the fact that we're not going to get these games that are Japan exclusive, America is doing what it can to provide content for the service that we're paying for. Now, it has middling results. Sometimes we get something that is just an all-time great classic like Star Tropics, but that's so few and far between. And so every once in a great while, we're going to get something really, really strange on our service as a result. I'm going to keep showing you a couple more examples here. One of those examples being another game of Mahjong. You know, don't need Mahjong in my life, so that's fine. But this one is To Whom the Bell Frog Tolls. Now, this one gets referenced in Super Smash Bros. For being a very uniquely titled game. Again, this was made by the developer who actually did Link's Awakening, I believe. So you see a lot of similarities in the graphical style and everything else. Super cool stuff. Sadly, we're never going to be able to play this. Probably ever. I mean, maybe like 40 years down the line, Nintendo will finally like get together a team or something if it becomes financially viable. But it's not today, is basically what I'm trying to say here. So what did the US get in response to this? That's right. We got Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare. I had never even heard of this game. I know of Alone in the Dark, sure. But a Game Boy Color exclusive sequel to Alone in the Dark? Had no clue. And I'll tell you something, it's not the best game that I've ever played. It was kind of tough to get into. I mean, graphically speaking, it's pretty impressive. I know that they were going to do some experimental stuff like this for Resident Evil 2, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'd rather have To Whom the Bell Frog Tolls, but maybe I'm just being a weeb here. I don't know. Point is that this is basically the little secret that maybe some of you didn't know, that whenever you see a really strange title added to the NSO service, this is why. This is because Japan has a lot of classic games that we never got here in the US, and so they're serving out those games to their audiences in Japan now. And here in the US, we got to get whatever we can get by any means necessary, I guess, because quality is not a factor. But all right, guys, I just wanted to show you this fun little thing here. I hope you had a good time with it. I love checking between both regions to see what we're getting and stuff like that. It's a ton of fun. Sometimes those games that they don't put out in the US are kind of playable. So I recommend you download them yourself. All you have to do is just make a Japanese account, and then you can go to the Japanese eShop to download it, and then you can access this content via your US account, which, you know, ideally you have your NSO on there, so it will work. And have some fun. Yeah, if you didn't know that, a subscription would be a nice little thank you. Otherwise, don't worry about it. And yeah, if you had a good time, I'm glad. All right, well, anyways, take care.